All right, what's going on, everyone? The Air Lord is back after a super long hiatus. Welcome back to the world of content. Um, I am jumping into reviews once again. Do these for games and TV shows, and clearly done these for a wide variety of TV shows in the past, most notably The Walking Dead. But I've also branched out into different series, including the topic matter for our video today. This is review of season 2 of The Last of Us, 7 episodes that spanned the past couple of weeks and just concluded this past Sunday. And with the freshness of it all, wanted to give it a fair review, essentially just like across the board, and then throughout the video, particularly going into like some episodes and the thinking behind them and individual reviews of how that went. But of course, I'm not doing this solo. A guest that's been on the channel throughout much of its history. We got pdaaaawg, who may or may not still be making YouTube videos, but I'll plug his channel anyway. So,
I don't think so. It's been a long time.
hello and welcome
But
to the
yes,
channel again.
hello. Whoa, I've never been here before. Oh my
Yes,
goodness.
yes,
In actuality, I think it's been like 13 years, which is insane.
it's
Like,
wild.
that's like almost half of my life. It's mental.
Yeah,
But yeah, anyway, much like the last time, we both watched The Last of Us series one, which was 2023, I want to say, maybe
it was
2022,
early 2023. First season came out.
2023. And yeah, both of us at that point like had played The Last of Us Part One. We both loved it, and I would say the first series we both enjoyed. I enjoyed it quite a bit actually. I thought it was. I think I preferred it over Fallout. I said that in my Fallout review. I did think it was a really good adaptation, which is basically what it was. Like at least Fallout did something original. Series one of this show basically was the first game, start to finish, with like a couple of new things, couple of new side stories, but besides that, it was pretty one for one, and I thought it was a pretty good, you know, version of it. What's your kind of now that it's been a couple of years? Do you have the same opinion of the first series as you had
I
when
do.
we did our first review?
Yeah, and I felt like, in my opinion, and I said this at one point in in our review because we did this same thing together back then, that The Last of Us kind of kicked off this successful wave of video game adaptations. Before, you had some pretty awful adaptations. You had like the Assassin's Creed movie that really didn't land. You had multiple Resident Evil spin-offs. It was always kind of like a taboo subject, like Hollywood film directors trying to touch video game adaptations. It was just like a known thing, like, oh, that just doesn't work. Like, that's not possible to adapt it. Games just don't translate as well onto the screen. Novels and books, much easier to take that because you don't have any audio or video to work with. So it's much easier to, put stuff on a canvas and create it fresh. With games, it's a little tougher because you already got the medium. But I thought The Last of Us did a very good job, right? Like it stuck to the script of the first season, but I thought it enhanced a lot of things, such as probably my favorite episode, with the survivalist Bill and his relationship, which is done very differently in the first game. Bill is alive when Joel and Ellie encounter him, but that's not the case in the show. And even though that's not the case and you don't get that same interaction, like the way they played that story, I think most people just significantly are like, wow, like that was really well done. It just had heart, right? Like it had heart, it had soul. It wasn't too overblown. It didn't do too much, didn't do too little. Like it was obviously enough to warrant itself a second season. So yes, it
And I
was a
think
very good
that,
adaptation.
yeah, I think that it really helped for them that they were adapting such a good original material because Last of Us Part One, I think, is one of the best like video game stories. I think, well,
Yeah.
don't even have to say video game. It's one of the best stories I think that's been told. You know, it's a kind of timeless lesson about kind of keeping your humanity in like post-apocalyptic settings and stuff. And obviously, pretty much universally loved the game series, very much so the same. Now, this is where it gets interesting because season two of the show, much like season one, is basically adapting the second game. And we talked about it at the, not at the end, but like the final third of our last review. We talked about the extensive history of the second game, which I'm not really going to go into again now. But basically, long story short, it was very controversial. A lot of people were not happy with where the story went. And the big question going into this series was, are they going to change anything? They have this golden opportunity to move things around. There's a lot of timeline jumping in the game, like in the video game itself. Are they going to play around with that in the show, which they kind of do, like to some extent, but not like fully? And it basically, in my opinion, does seem like they are just trying to retell the game, especially in the way that the series ends. Obviously, not wanting to spoil too much early on. This basically will become a full spoiler review very soon.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
was
I
gonna
imagine
say
it's very hard to talk about this without
I
just
didn't
going straight
start the
into.
video by saying there will be spoilers. We're gonna be talking about all 7 episodes of season 2. So if you haven't seen them,
Yeah,
go see them first.
which was the first thing that surprised me, by the way, right off the bat, is that one of our complaints about the first series was that there was only 9 episodes, and they've somehow made even fewer episodes this season. Like, I didn't know it was the
Yeah.
seventh episode was the finale
This
until
just
like
seems
the
to be
week
a
off.
thing
It
on
was crazy.
HBO. Like Game of Thrones, most notably. Like you get deeper into the run, and they're like, "We're gonna give you less runway to put your
Yeah,
show
or in
on."
season two though. That's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah,
But yeah, so very controversial video game in terms of the story. People do like it. Like that's not to say that like everyone hated it and it was universally banned. Like people still really did like it. It won a lot of awards and stuff. So there
yeah.
definitely is an audience of people that enjoy where it's going. And obviously, yourself, you didn't play the game. I've also never played the game, but I've done quite a bit of like reading into it. Like I kind of knew the story, like it was spoiled, like when the leaks happened. But I did quite a lot of digging to see kind of where the story goes and what kind of happens in it specifically. And I think I have a slightly better grasp of like how things in the show compared to how it was done in the game than what you would have had, which is maybe better for you because you were more going into it blind essentially. So, what kind of expectations did you have like going into the second series? Were you apprehensive? Were you kind of curious about where it was going to go because you
Yeah,
weren't as kind of privy
I
to
I
the in and
had
outs?
so obviously what you're discussing for is we should just put it on the table. One of the
Yeah, may as
biggest
well.
reasons people do not like the second Last of Us game is that the lead character Joel dies very early on in the game, and I feel like most people who watched the second season knew that. Although I will say there's a growing number of people, and also people I know in my personal life, who don't play video games at all and they're watching this show like older like elderly couples that I know and like just different groups of people that you would see them and be like they're not gamers but they're just enjoying the show and they're going into this not knowing. We went into this knowing because even though we didn't play the second game, there were some pretty massive leaks if you remember that actually spoiled Joel dying. There were just like photos of him dead on the ground and I'm like, oh wow, this is I was one of those
Yeah, it
people.
was ballsy at the
Yeah,
very
it was
least.
summer
Yeah,
of
that's like
2020. I remember just seeing like photos of Joel dead, and I'm like that kind of sucks. Like, what the heck's going on here? So, it just kind of, I think,
But were you curious about like what was going to happen after that? Because obviously that's the big headline is that Joel is not going to be in the rest of the series. Were you kind of curious? Okay, like I know that Ellie goes on this revenge hunt, but you don't really know the full ins and outs of it. So were you kind of intrigued into what they were going to do with
well,
it? And
right, for the same reasons I was intrigued about season one, I was intrigued about season two. I'm like, all right, you got source material. I want to see how well it's adapted. The same concept carried over. Even though there was more controversy with the second one, and we already talked about the first game being beloved, and now we're going into controversy territory. The same concept, it was homogenous. It was still, I want to just experience this adaptation, how it goes from one medium to the next. So I came into it with an open mind. As soon as I saw the ending of episode one with Abby coming atop the hill, overlooking Jackson, I knew where it was going. And it's funny because I've watched the majority of these episodes with my dad, actually, and he's one of the people I described. Didn't play any of the games, and this is all new to him. And so he didn't have any inkling where it was headed because Joel was a focus for the first episode. I really liked the therapy session he has with the woman who we later find out he killed her husband in that flashback with Ellie, where he wasn't honest with her, which led into his
mm,
confession. But I liked some of Joel's character development where it's like looking into his psyche of how he's been dealing with what he did after all this time. And it's funny because it's different in the game where Joel confesses what he did to Ellie like way earlier on when Ellie finds like a voice recording of like
Yeah,
her.
I was going to go into that actually, like
Yeah,
a
and
bit
then
later on in the review, like the
in
differences in that.
right, and I almost feel like this story element was a problem to Craig Mazin, the showrunner. He's like, how could all of this time have passed? This like so much uneasy history between Ellie and Joel, where Ellie knows the truth. Like she wouldn't tell anyone. She wouldn't tell Dina, Jesse. Like like the fact that it happened so close to Joel's death. That was a better decision. Like I did like that fact, and so like I didn't have a problem with how they did it, but I certainly feel like with Joel, even again, the second season illuminates more than the game, that there's a lot left on the table for Joel. Like I wanted him to face as a character what he did. Now, you know, freaking Neil Druckmann, the savior of the gaming universe in terms of storytelling, would tell you that Joel meeting his death is the means by which he faces what he did. But I was looking for more of an emotional character development sort of journey. Do you like agree there? Did you want to see that after episode one, where you were like, "Wow, I'd love to see more of Joel," but knowing where it was going?
You know what's very funny actually. I think we're like what, maybe 10 minutes into this review, if even. We already have our first somewhat big disagreement because I don't prefer what they did in the show. I prefer what the game did actually. When it comes to the Ellie reveal thing, like how she kind of finds out about the Fireflies, because whenever she finds the voice recorder, there's basically no way for like Joel to get away from it. Like he has to kind of face the facts. And I think I preferred Ashley Johnson's reaction to it as Ellie than Bella Ramsey's. It's a lot more kind of guttural, the game version. And you were saying before that oh, like Joel kind of coming to terms with that so soon before he dies. Like you preferred that. In the game, it's actually much longer. I think it might be like years. I think Ellie discovers the voice
That's
recorder when
it
she's like
is.
17,
Yup.
and
It's
then
a
2 years
flashback.
go by,
Yeah.
and she doesn't forgive him for those 2 years. Basically, like they're on pretty bad
Yeah.
terms, you know.
Not
And then
only
it's not
that,
until
they go back to the location of the old Firefly base that's obviously, you know, abandoned and in
yeah,
ruins. And Ellie says, like, tell me what happened here. So there's almost more weight to it being in the location where Joel did the massacre, coming back to the scene of
yeah,
the crime, rather than just on the porch at
yeah, where
retelling it.
kind of Ellie deducts it from the Eugene example. Like she kind of puts two and two together and says, "Oh, if he lied to Gina about Eugene, he probably lied to me about the Fireflies." Which I'm not like. Obviously, like he does confess that that is what happened, but I think that having more concrete evidence would like mean that there's no way out for Joel, and like he kind of knows that that's the end. And I think as well the porch scene, which because what they did in the show is they basically combined the scene we're describing, which is when Ellie goes to Salt Lake and Joel finally admits what happened with the porch scene that's in the game, which is a much smaller version of what happens in the show. Because in the game, when they do the porch scene, it's after the dance and all that, and that's the scene where Ellie says to Joel, like, "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'd love to try." Essentially,
Yeah, which I
but
thought was
and I feel as
nice
if
because it
yeah,
gave like some hope, because it's like how much tragedy do you want to inject? Because obviously, you know, the very next day is when he dies, so it's like how much
yeah,
tragedy, because that's their
yeah. But
last conversation. So how much
I
tragedy
think there's
before
more
the
weight
moment?
to it though when she says that after a 2 year kind of ordeal than when it
Mm,
happens, like a couple. I think it's 9 months in the show, which is still a long
yeah.
time, but it's not as long as like 2 years.
Yeah.
And
This is
the
definitely
one
a
thing I will say,
byproduct of not playing the game, and I don't have the
yeah,
greatest frame of reference for for
the,
compare.
the I will say the one line they did add in the show, which I really liked, was when Joel said like, "But if I was to do it again, I would, save your life 1,000 out of 1,000 times," or
Mm,
whatever the line is. It obviously wasn't that, but he has that line, and he said, and Pedro Pascal again killing it as Joel, like he's like tearing up and stuff, and he kind of says it through like tears and crying and stuff. Like you could really tell that like he loves her like his own daughter. It's been years now. They've been kind of proxy father daughter for basically 5 years at this point in Jackson. Um, that is essentially what happens. So yeah, I think I preferred what happened in the game. The show didn't do a bad job of it. I just think that it would have been more impactful if they did it the way the game did. What I will say about this show that I thought was quite interesting was we're talking about all the Joel stuff, I guess, off the bat because like he doesn't appear in the show after this essentially. Like we're talking about the second to last episode when it's all flashbacks and
Yeah.
they go through all of Ellie's birthdays in Jackson, which I think is actually a really neat
I
adaptation of what
like
they did
that
in the
trick.
games.
It was a nice way
Yeah,
of showing a progression of time, but doing it in an interesting way rather than saying 2 years later, 3 years. Like
yeah,
you could
yeah,
have easily given us a generic amount of time, but this like put it because obviously Joel cares so much about Ellie, so it's like the most important day for someone's their birthday, most
yeah.
typically. So
And
it
you see how above and beyond he goes
yeah, so you see
to
the
celebrate with
evolution
her.
of the birthday, like what he does, and then how she changes a teenager growing up, and how she evolves through each one. So yes, that's a good call out. I did very much like that.
Yeah, and like that's a different thing in the game because in the game, and I guess because of the medium, it's a longer game. It's 30 hours. They basically sprinkle in like most of the flashbacks in the show do happen. Obviously, the YouTube one doesn't, but a lot of the other ones are scenes that are taken basically from the game. But like in the game, they're sprinkled in essentially, whereas in the show, they deliver it as like one big package. They're like, okay, Pedro Pascal, he's back for this one episode. He basically is the main character of that episode. Everything's told through his eyes. He's the one that gets the cake. He's the one that we follow when Eugene gets bit. Like Ellie's almost a secondary character when she's been the protagonist of the show up to this point. They kind of gave him the spotlight for that final episode, and I think that basically was like the Pedro Pascal like farewell. It's like we're not going to see this guy again, and if we do, it'll be like a 5 second cameo, I imagine, in like a dream sequence.
Well, there
But
was a behind the
beyond that,
scenes that was literally titled Pedro's Farewell. So that
oh well,
episode,
well there you go.
that episode was his fair. And I saw a thing where in season three they asked Craig and Neil like, "Oh, would Pedro come back?" And they did like never say never, but it's like it's very obvious that season three is Abby's story, and then it's
Yeah,
gonna connect to the final scene of what we saw in season two.
yeah,
So
which I guess we should segue into. Like, out with the old, in with the new. Pedro
yeah,
Pascal is out, and we have Caitlin Dever comes in as Abby. I don't think that casting was announced when we did our last review.
no, it's not.
People were a little skeptical, I think, when she was first announced because she's like 5'3" and like probably like 100 pounds or something like
She's
110.
been
But
in some decent roles before this. She had just been in like some like chick flick Netflix show that had done really well. So she had
hmm.
like acting creds. The one
Oh
thing that
yeah, oh she's an established actress. Like
right, the
she,
one thing that frustrates me though is people who like again, like they see the character in like a medium like a book or a game where there's more you have more leeway for description. But then people are like, "Oh, like why didn't she bulk up and have muscles and look like this, cuz I don't know if Neil ever admitted this, but the vibe that I got from Abby from the game was that she was almost this like tomboy transgender, but not quite, like just on the cusp of transgender because she's very, 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 very masculine. And when you see the adaptation of Abby in Caitlin Dever, there's a little more feminine to it. Like it's almost it's tomboy, but it's not like you're not into you haven't crossed over into like like man tomboy. Like she still has like a girl look to her. Like even the final scene of season two, when we're shown that we're going to see her perspective going into season three, like she still looks very feminine. So but I think it's ridiculous people saying like, oh, that's why isn't she go to the
yeah. It's
gym
like you guys were
7
complaining about this in the game, so why are you complaining about it being fixed in the show? It's weird. You can't win in a case like
Dude,
this. She's
people did
either
this when Jeffrey Dean Morgan came on, because in the comics, Negan's like a little bit of like, like, he's got mass and bulk to him. So, and freaking Jeffrey Dean Morgan had just finished doing, Grey's Anatomy, a soap opera, before he came onto The Walking Dead. People were like, why doesn't he look like a, like a 600 pound,
like from Brock Lesnar or something.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, like Terminator bodybuilder. It's like it's not always possible, right? Like you got to have some concessions, and as long as the acting is done well, I can look past some details, right? So
Yeah. Which I
anyway,
will say, she's not in the show a lot. She's only in the first 2 episodes,
okay,
and she's
this
in a
was
little bit of the.
this was the main thing I wanted to talk about in this review. It shocked me the way they handled Abby's character in this season because in the game, correct me if I'm wrong, in the game you flip flop between Ellie and Abby. It's
Yes.
very it's
Yeah.
very jarring. And they make you play as Abby so close after the death of Joel, and that's one of the things people didn't like. They're like, "Why am I playing as the killer of the guy that I spent the whole first game, went through all these moral decisions? Now I got to play the killer. Like, why would you
Yeah.
do that to me?" That was the that was the main thing people were angry
Yeah.
about. And I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, I was like, how can the show fix that? Well, they fixed it by having her character basically not be in season 2 at all. She's in the scene where obviously she kills Joel and like leading up to that. And then she has one brief cameo at the end of the season finale. And a
It's just more a way to say season 3 will be her. Like it's barely
right.
even a scene. It's like she wakes up and looks out a window
But
essentially, or something like that.
that was shocking to me. And I said this to my dad who I was watching with. I'm like, I'm floored that like she's not in it because it gave other characters an opportunity to shine, which I'm going to commend season 2 for doing this because understanding like the cult, the what's the group? Like the military group that's in
Oh, the
Seattle.
WLF.
Yeah, that group. Um there were other characters. I don't remember. I don't know what the character's name is. It's Jeffrey Wright's character.
Yeah,
Um,
Isaac. Isaac. Who,
yeah,
by the way, he
Isaac.
played him in the game as well. He's
Yeah,
actually reprised. I didn't even
I
know that he
was
reprised his role.
really intrigued by his character. The episode where you see him as a soldier, and then the beginning of that episode was nuts, where he takes out the
Yeah, it's explosive.
soldiers,
Yeah,
and then you see like the evolution of him, where he's torturing like the cult person. I'm
terrifying.
like, I was interested. I was like, man, like, okay, they're giving us some good characters here, and like
Yeah,
we're not seeing them though through Abby's perspective, which was
yeah. I think yeah, you get blue balled quite a bit. I think in this series, which I'm not really a big fan of. Like, there's a lot of stuff where they kind of sprinkle in, and then they're like, oh. Before you get too excited, they're not actually going to be in the series, but you don't know that watching it. Like you're thinking, okay, they're showing Isaac in this episode. Okay, this must be an episode where Isaac's going to get featured a bit more. But no, he has that torture scene, and then you literally don't see him again for the rest of this series. And you're like, why did Jeffrey Wright was only available for like one afternoon? Like, why is he only in like 3 scenes? And I know obviously Isaac is a big part of Ellie's story, or Ellie, a big part of Abby's story. So Jeffrey Wright will probably be featured in the next series a lot more. But in that case, like, why even introduce him and like kind of blue ball us in that way? It's weird.
I
I think
didn't
the way that
mind
you're,
it because with TV you can deviate with with multiple perspectives. The fact that we can just cut and jump, like in the game, we're never gonna play as Isaac, although that would have been a really good idea. Maybe I don't know. Can you imagine? That would have been cool. Like it almost gives you a pseudo replacement for Joel, and if you had been able to play as him, but I liked it again. Like I liked that we got like this understanding of these groups, and it's like the
yeah, it started to
main
expand the universe a lot more.
well, right, because the main plot is just Ellie wants revenge on Abby for killing Joel, but like you're entering like this larger like mess of a
Major city.
situation. Yeah, it's a mess of a situation in a major city. And so it's just it kind of just pulls you in because because of their conflict, but I almost wish because it just feels like Ellie and Dina they're strangers to the conflict. I was hoping that there would be more that like would put them in direct involved. And this is a criticism of the game too, because the only reason they get involved is just because they're chasing someone else who's in the military going against the other group. So I wish there was just more ways of connecting them. Because if Joel was alive, maybe there's something where this a group attacks Jackson or captures someone or isn't happy with what Joel did. Like you could have had like a more organic way to like introduce them into this group, but it's like oh, Ellie stumbles across a conflict and sort of become parts of it, but she doesn't want to have any part of it because her main goal is just killing Abby. It's like, oh, there's this secondary
Yeah,
conflict going on, but Ellie's going to kill all of her friends. Oh, and then Ellie's some sort of involved in the secondary conflict. That's interesting to us. Oh, but we don't really care about it because the main goal is just her killing Abby. It's like it's secondary. It's always treated as a side quest, and so I can't
yeah.
fully get invested in it, even though in parts I am getting invested in it. So it's a weird dichotomy. It's
Well,
very, very
it's
weird.
interesting that you mentioned going briefly to the Abby thing you were talking about earlier. 'Cause this kind of ties into it a bit. what I would have liked, because I feel as if they kind of tried to walk a tightrope, and I'm not really a big fan of how it ended up because I think one of my biggest kind of critiques of the series compared to the game, I'm not a big fan of the game, but one thing I did actually like about the game, in terms of where I thought this was going to go for this show, was that you didn't know that Abby was the daughter of that doctor when she kills Joel. You just think that she's some kind of killer psychopath, which is why fans revolted against playing against her because they didn't know her life in a show because like you don't really need to like have her in the show that much. Like in this series, she's only in 3 episodes and she's barely in all three of them. Obviously the second one she's in the most. I feel as if they kept it with a game where like she just kind of came in and like she killed Joel and you're kind of like the shock is so big that you're like, oh my gosh, if you're obviously someone who didn't know about the games, then that is a big shock and you would empathize a lot more of Ellie going into like the whole situation. And I feel as if leaving Abby very mysterious would actually make that last scene much more intriguing because then you realize, oh wait, like there's a whole nother side to this that we're not seeing and we don't know about it because they kept it very, they didn't talk about it that much. However, the way the show did it was they made it a lot more exposition-y. Like the first scene of the entire series is them like knelt over the graves and Abby basically being like, "Oh, whoever did this, he was a attractive man named Joel, and we're gonna go kill him."
Which
And I was like,
Caitlin
okay, well
Dever
now,
says, she's like, "Wow, you are attractive." A lot of people didn't like that line. I was like,
yeah, I was kind of like, what a weird
I
thing
was
to
like, this
say.
is corny. I was
It's
like,
weird.
well, you know what it made me think of? It made me think of some of like our editing sessions where I'm like, this is definitely
Oh yeah,
something. If I had a character say this about someone else, Pete would be like,
yeah, it would come
no,
off very
cross
unnatural, you know.
off. Yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah. The red
See,
text
there
is
is
out.
an
It's bad.
audience for it. You can see it's
Yeah,
like corny
yeah.
shit.
But yeah, my point is that like they kind of make it very obvious right off the bat. Okay, Abby, there's more strings to her bow. She's someone that is also kind of suffering from vengeance, and she's out on the hunt for someone. But what I don't like about that is that like, okay, you know a lot more about Abby going into the Joel death, so you're a bit obviously you still don't like the fact that Joel dies. But at least you're kind of like, okay, Abby's getting like eye for an eye sort of thing here, and she spares Ellie and stuff. But then that makes the audience go, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's find out more about Abby then whenever she leaves. And then that's what we're describing now is that I feel kind of cheated that she wasn't really in the series that much and you focus exclusively on Ellie. Like, I feel as if you either need to keep them mysterious and then don't have them in the show again, or flesh them out, but then have the kind of back and forth that the game was doing, as you said earlier. Have, an Ellie episode, then have an Abby episode, and, keep it going in that way. Because you're kind of equally invested in both stories at that point because they did a lot more to make Abby's motives much more apparent early on in the series, which they didn't do in the game. I think they kind of tried to do both, which I don't think worked in either way. I think either, yeah, keep it keep it very vague and then have the shock of the Abby series being the next series be a pleasant surprise, or keep the expositiony stuff but then focus more on Abby in this series rather than just having her disappear for like 4 episodes. That's my kind of take on that Abby situation anyway. But when she was on screen, I guess talking briefly about the performance of Caitlin Dever, I think she did really good. I think she was one of the. I think her and there's someone else we'll talk about in a little bit that I think are the two standouts acting wise for this series. I
Yeah.
think she is amazing. I think that
Who's
she's got a lot of emotion and a lot of like the scene that we were talking about the last episode and her waking up and stuff. But she actually does have a scene just before that where she's got Tommy on the floor. She kills Jesse like immediately, essentially, as a bit of shock. But she like her kind of guttural like get up now and she's all angry. Like you could tell from her face like she's been through hell. And like obviously we're going to find out in series 3 what happened to her, but
right?
I could believe that. You know what I mean? Like I think she did really good job of portraying
It's
that. And in
also a
the first three
natural
episodes I thought she
reaction
was
to
great as
having
well.
three of her friends murdered by Ellie. So,
Yeah.
including someone who's pregnant.
Yeah. And I think that the actress like I think she did a really good job of portraying that. Which I think, it was going to be hard to cast someone
Yeah.
like Abby, and I think you need someone who can toe the line of being like, being someone that you want to root for and root against. And I think that obviously we didn't see a lot of her this series, but I'm optimistic about the next series and what she's going to bring to it because it's going to be her story. Bella Ramsey's going to be like a side character in that series, I imagine. I think that what we saw of her this season, I've got high hopes for where it's going to go. And they could have messed that up. They could have had an actress come in who maybe didn't suit the role of Abby, maybe wasn't very good at kind of portraying that complex dynamic of hers. And it may, and then whenever you find out, oh, like it's her season next season, people might just tap out and be like, no. But I think that Caitlin did a really good job of, um, getting people invested in that. I would say. What did you
Yeah,
think of Caitlin's performance?
I really enjoy it. I also agree with everything that you said. And I mean, fun fact that you probably don't know in the audience, like when she did the whole scene with Joel, like all that emotion, everything that goes into that, 'cause that was also well acted. A few days before that, she had lost her mother, and so she was fresh off of acting into that, which is like, wow, do a pivotal scene coming off the death of one of your actual biological parents, and so she's
Yeah,
acting a scene where she's channeling rage from losing a parent. It's very, I like that when like life imitates art kind of thing. I mean, obviously,
yeah.
it's very sad that she lost her mother, and
You're not saying you're happy about that.
condolences,
Yeah,
and
it's like,
yes, yes. And this is also partially a joke because I think I've sent this article to Pete 4 times about this.
oh yes,
So I needed to squeeze it in one more time into this
exactly.
review.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought she was really good. The other person I think was the standout of this series was Isabella Mendez, who plays Dina. So Dina actually got recast. So
Oh,
Dina
interesting.
did appear briefly in she did appear briefly. Oh, you know this because she appeared briefly in season one as the real
I
life
don't know
person,
why they do
played
that.
Dina.
I don't like some recasts always irk me because it just feels like universe breaking. Like the one, I mean, this is like a video in and of itself. Like what I don't know if you have an answer for this. Like one a recast in any series movie that's like really irks you because it broke the continuity in some way. For me, it was Rachel Dawes in The Dark Knight, where she's not Katie
Oh yeah,
Holmes anymore, and it was like a
yeah, with
different
Maggie
it's
Gyllenhaal.
like a different character. Like not to say that Maggie Gyllenhaal didn't do a good job, but it's like feels like a different character. I'm like, like I know you can't and actors have schedules and things happen, but like for the viewer and the fan, it's just like, ah man, that
Yeah,
fucking
I
sucks.
guess for the Last of Us' defense, I think like the Dina voice actress or like the actress that played her in the game, like I think you kind of see her. I don't think she's named, but I think like in when it was coming out, people were kind of like, well, that's obviously Dina because it's the same person. And as we said earlier, Jeffrey Wright came back to play the same character. The person who played oh, what's her name? The woman who sends Joel on the quest in the first place. She's the same actress as the video game. Um, Maureen,
Oh
is that her name or
damn.
something? Or like
No, it's
Mairead,
not
something like
Maureen.
that. But
It's
something like that.
Maureen.
One of them
Maureen
names.
is. Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
Maureen?
yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I
Actually,
haven't pulled
I'm
that out of
glad
nowhere.
you said that character's name because I have like this was a solution I thought to the whole we don't know who Abby is and we do because it is you cannot convince me. If you had Neil Druckmann on a lie detector test and you said when you made The Last of Us 1 and Joel shot the doctor in the doctor's office, did you know that that doctor's daughter would be the most pivotal character alongside Ellie in your next game? Like, you cannot convince me that he had this plan because he seems such a throwaway character, which I think why it was infuriating. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, shoot that guy, move on. I think it would have been way more impactful if it was Maureen's child. Like the head of the Fireflies, essentially, and the person that Joel first promises to bring Ellie cross country to get her to that base. There's more history. She was with Ellie's mom. Like there's history there, and maybe Abby as a young character could be in the background. She's around, so this doesn't feel so forced. I think that's the thing. Like it almost felt forced in the game, and in some ways forced here because it's like okay, we need some character to feel affected by what Joel did. Well, how are we going to do that? Okay, well, one of the characters Joel kills has a child. Who's it going to be? Oh, the doctor. It's like it's just, it's just like pick someone. Like like roll a six-sided die, and it's like all right, 5 is the soldier he shoots in the stairwell. 4 is the is like one of the nurses. It's like it should have just been Maureen because she's like the head of the snake. Like, and you
Yeah.
could have
Well, the
incorporated.
thing is, I'm curious actually in season three if they're going to go into that. Like, obviously we had the flashback episode of Joel, aka Ellie's dad, basically. Are we going to get like a flashback scene with Abby's dad? Like, maybe I could definitely see that being a possibility in season three because we know they like to kind of divert away from the main story to tell these sort of side stories. That'd be a very interesting because that'd be all completely original. That'd be like a Bill situation where we wouldn't know anything about this guy besides him being a doctor for the Fireflies. I'd be very curious to see, what happens with that. Like they might expand on that. So Neil, if you're listening to this, he may have heard what you're saying, and he might do that for season three. So you can get a little bit more elaboration. But I get your point that like at the time of creation, he obviously wasn't imagining this minute character to have such a big, development in it. I think he's trying to like have his cake and eat it, in that sense. But anyway, so that's a hell of a sidetrack. I was trying to think about what I was even talking about, and then I remembered. Oh yeah, Dina. So Dina, she got recast. Isabella Mendez, and if I'm being honest, I think she's better than the game Dina. I think she's really good in this show. I think she's a really really good job of like again. I think she's very kind of. I like her kind of spunk in the show. Like I like how kind of upbeat she is, especially in the early parts of the season. I think she's got good kind of camaraderie with Ellie. I think like people were kind of complaining about Bella Ramsey themselves. I actually don't think they did a bad job. I think they were perfectly suitable for Ellie. I don't know why people were saying that they have such a big issue with it, but Isabella, I think, is like whenever you have the two of them in the scene together, I think she kind of steals the show over Bella, which is a bit of a shame because Bella's the protagonist. But regardless, though, I think that Isabella did a really, really good job with her character. I felt really kind of invested in her story and her dilemma with Jesse and Bella being in this sort of love triangle. Obviously, the kid being a factor. That's a slightly bigger thing in the show, I think, than it was in the game. At least at this stage in the game, the pregnancy is a much bigger thing. Jesse actually knowing about it is like I think that's actually a new thing. I don't think Jesse knew that Dana was pregnant in the game, or if he did, it was like a very throwaway thing. Whereas what I like about the show is they actually made a point of Jesse to be like, I need to protect myself for my unborn child. It gives them bigger stakes to actually like get out of Seattle ASAP, which is what they kind of agreed to towards the end of the series. But um, yeah, in general, I think she was really, really good. Um, I think most of the other people in the show were pretty serviceable. Like I said, Jeffrey Wright isn't really in it that much, but I think he does a pretty decent job. Tommy's back. I think he does pretty good. He's actually got a bit more to do. Actually, that's a lie because he comes with Ellie for quite a lot of her story in the
And
game.
putting
Uh,
Tommy in the defense scene in episode 2, like one of the
yes,
best additions
and
to season
absolutely,
2 was
absolutely.
the fight
Yeah.
against
Can we talk about the Jackson fight?
yeah.
Can we talk about it?
Well,
All
because
right.
it's great because it showed the episode had both enemies of the apocalypse. You've got the dark human side with what Abby does to Joel, but then you also have this ginormous attack on Jackson where it's just countless, infected. Tommy taking on a bloater with a flamethrower. I'm like, this is fucking awesome, And
Yeah,
so
like it's they because like we don't like Jackson. There is no attack on Jackson in the game at all. That's all completely new for the show, and I
no,
think
and
it's like
Tommy is with Joel when Joel
yeah, when he gets
he
killed.
gets killed, and so this puts
Yeah,
Tommy in like. But I liked it because it like Tommy is the protective leader character, and they gave that role to him. I'm like, good, good.
yeah,
glad Neil had the foresight not to just make him be, because you
yeah.
already have Ellie walking into the situation, seeing Joel die, so it's natural that like it should be those two characters. Like, why do you need a third character? And it's funny because Dina's
Well,
there, but
Dina's there to be
they
fair,
put
but
her to
Dina's
sleep.
sedated.
Yeah, but that's what their
Yeah,
way
yeah,
of getting her out of the equation. It's like, all right, we won't kill her off. We need her. All right, here's some stuff to put her to sleep. It's like, okay, it's like, wow, that's
yeah.
interesting. I should remember that tactic if I'm in a situation where multiple characters are in a scene. I'm like, I don't need that character in the scene. So like, I'll put him to sleep.
Just get the sedator out.
Give her a drug. But yes, the defense
Yeah, I
scene
think yeah,
really
it's
well done.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you can tell where a lot of the budget for the series went because it was very well kind of coordinated, very well choreographed. Even before that, you had the scene in the mountain where like all the infected like burst out from the snow.
mm-hmm.
Obviously, that came from the game, but that's pretty faithful to the game, like how all that happens, and it looks just as good. But yeah, the Jackson fight, like it's crazy because you obviously have the Joel stuff happening, but I'm almost more like, oh, get me back to Jackson because it looks like I'm so curious what's gonna happen with it. The flamethrowers. I like the kind of the little intricacies or idiosyncrasies that happen in that. Like, for example, when the big bloaters, whatever they're called, come up to them, one of the guys just runs. One of the guys, the flamethrowers, just bails, and I'm like, that's so funny just having that in the episode. Like, it kind of shows you that not everyone in Jackson is like as fearless as you want to
Well,
believe.
some of them have
Like
been
I think
behind
that's
those
pretty awesome.
walls the whole time and never had to deal with this shit, you know?
Yeah.
So, you
So
know.
and they did suffer a lot of losses and stuff. Like that actual like fight was pretty crazy. Do you want to hear a crazy fact, by the way, about that fight in particular?
Yeah.
They originally were gonna have Tommy fight two of them things, but they didn't have the budget for it, so they only did one. But I was like, that's crazy.
How would he have survived
Yeah, and
that?
yeah, I think that's the other thing is that like, how the hell would he have
I mean,
survived two of
there
them?
would
Like,
have had to have been like, you know, like a propane tank that he lights on fire and blows them up, or there should have been like some extra action to like make it logical that he killed two of them. But one thing that this scene adds to the Joel situation, I love the moment where the camera shows when he's getting put at gunpoint by Abby. He
hmm
looks out the window and sees the attack. Like in the distance,
yeah,
he sees it on fire, and it adds an extra level of tragedy because he dies never knowing if Jackson like survived or not. Like if
yeah. If his brother
yeah,
survived,
if
if
it
his
fell
sister-in-law,
completely or not. So like he dies, losing his life, but also he's like, oh, I don't know if that if the town is screwed. So I'm like,
yeah,
I was like, damn, like that's just like an extra level to it. So
yeah. I mean, I think that the episode two, I think episode two and episode six are probably the highlights of the series for me. If I was to pick one, it's tough. I think I probably will go episode two just because of how crazy, like that Jackson scene blew me away watching it. Like I really enjoyed it, and I think that was I think similar to like the Bill episode in the season one. It's another like the more they do this in the show, the more I'll support it. Like doing this stuff that's completely independent from the game, but adds so much more to like the characters and stuff. Like there's stuff that they take away from the games from the source material that I feel like that would have been nice to have, but the stuff they add to it I think is like really useful a lot of the time. There's one or two things they added to the show that I didn't like, which we'll probably get to a little later on, but the Jackson thing, big thumbs up, very Game of Thrones esque. I haven't felt like that since like watching peak Game of Thrones,
yeah,
you know,
this
like the
definitely
battles
felt
and
like
sieges and stuff.
Hard Home. It reminded me of Hard Home,
Yes.
like the big battle where like all the walkers attack. Or, yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
It's pretty crazy, but yeah, kind of like the series kind of starts off quite slow. Obviously, like the first episode is basically just being reintroduced to the characters and the world. Second episode, Joel dies, and then there's one more kind of quieter episode in Jackson where they kind of deal with the fallout of what happens. And then obviously that's when Ellie decides to leave because the council voted to not bring a search party out. I actually can't remember if that was in the game or not. I don't think it was, like the council having that vote. Um, but anyway,
again,
I think it is in the
I don't
game.
remember
Um,
because you
but
know.
yeah, but then Ellie obviously decides to go. Dina accompanies her, much like in the game, and then then we kind of get into the Seattle stuff, and that's like your day one, day two, day three, which again, that's what happened in the game. There were 3 days in Seattle, three from Ellie's perspective, three from Abby's, and they kind of intertwined. In the show, they decided to just do all of Ellie's scenes in one season, and we talked earlier about whether we were not sure if that's the right decision or not. I think I wouldn't have a big problem with it if there was more of it, because they did miss quite a lot of big stuff that happens in the game that isn't in the show. Like Ellie's first kind of kill in the journey to it is one of the other guys in Abby's party, and they basically like pin her down and like chain her to like a table or something, and they're basically like, oh, that's the girl who was in the room when Abby killed Joel, and basically Ellie like viciously stabs this guy to death, and basically it's like her first real expression of anger and rage from what happened with Joel. Like we kind of get that with the red light pipe scene that's also in the game, but
Right.
that's like a little later on in the story, whereas like we don't get that like first you know kill of hers. It's actually off screen, obviously in the show. Like she just comes back and is like, "Oh, I made her talk," and she said that to Dina. But yeah, I feel like if there was more stuff to the Ellie story, like there's more episodes, if I'm being totally honest, I think I wouldn't have had as much of an issue of it just being from her perspective. But as it stands, like I don't know about you, but I felt as if they didn't really spend a lot of time in Seattle. Like it doesn't really feel like they were there for that long before
Really?
they were going to go. Yeah, I mean it's only like what 2.5 episodes, maybe three. They're
Hmm.
in Seattle, and like each episode's only like what 40 minutes. I don't really feel like it's like, is it supposed to feel like an odyssey? I feel like I've been there for 3 days trying to hunt this person down, and I feel like I
It's
didn't
not
really
long
get
to
that sense of
me. I mean, I
time.
think again the varying perspectives of the other WLF members and whatnot. Like you feel the scale moving around in their little conflict, and then Ellie being. I think you had enough characters to give it scale, so I was fine in that regard. Um, and then like we said, like it seemed like they were. Well, you used the analogy, kind of like walking a tightrope with their storytelling, trying to get all these different perspectives in. And now I understand why they couldn't have Abby. But in this season, but it's just an interesting storytelling decision because but I was glad they didn't throw her in so immediately because that would have had the same effect as the game. People were like, "Why do I care about the bitch who just killed Joel?" You know, I mean, so
Yeah, you need to kind of look into her complicated relationship with like the WLF. Which by the way, which we might as well get into. Like, obviously, this is the first time we see the WLF as like an official faction. They're the kind of military operation that runs Seattle, and then you have the Seraphites, who are these kind of cultish figures that live in like the woods, and they use like bow and arrows and scythes and stuff. Which are obviously very kind of scary. You have that really, I think it's a really good scene. It's like the scene when the Seraphites are walking through the forest and there's a little girl and the dad, and then they obviously get like they communicate through whistling, and then later in the episode you see that like that entire party's just been wiped out, and like they've been massacred, and you kind of realize, oh, these characters are going into like really dangerous territory here because there's this kind of internal war going on in Seattle, and they're inadvertently throwing themselves in the middle of it on this kind of petty revenge quest. Um, and like I didn't really mind like a lot of that stuff. I think the look of them was pretty cool. All of the people that were there, but again, like kind of what I was saying before, like I feel as if you're kind of drip fed this stuff, but you don't really know the full ins and outs. So maybe that's deliberate. I imagine it will be expanded on a lot more in Abby's story because she's a lot more involved. You kind of get a hint of that at the end of the series when they talk about Abby being like the next in line to take over from Isaac. Um, so like they obviously view her very highly at the WLF, and I think
right.
you're going to see a lot more of that in season three. But in season two, I feel like there just kind of wasn't really as much of that as there was in the game, or as maybe I would have liked. And they focused a lot more on. I'm trying to think about what kind of stuff happened in those episodes. They focused a lot more on. I think definitely Dina and Ellie's relationship was focused on a lot. Um, because another difference is that in the game they're already like dating whenever they go to Seattle, whereas in the show they kind of fall in love while they're in Seattle.
I like that. I mean, it gave
Which
character development. It gave like like stakes. Like I like the bonding through action. Fan of that. So I didn't mind it.
I just feel as if it kind of took away from the main point of why they're in Seattle. I felt like whenever I was seeing a scene, this is really funny. We did so for clarity, folks. We didn't talk about any like our thoughts about this show before we recorded. So I'm very interested because we both were disagreeing on quite a lot of stuff. It's good for discussion, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'm kind of in the opposite, but where I feel like it kind of took away from the whole purpose. Like I feel as if this should have been like Ellie's supposed to be on this kind of bloodthirsty, rush to try and find this woman who killed her like kind of father figure. But I felt as if the show was getting kind of sidetracked with other things, like again introducing like Isaac and then kind of not doing anything with him, or having them focus a lot on this Dina stuff. Like I just feel as if again the biggest resolution to my criticisms is just having more episodes, which we just didn't have. I felt like it was too constricted with time, and I feel as if like if they just had more, because you could easily still do that Dana stuff that I'm kind of saying took away from the main story, but if you had more episodes to expand on the main story, I would be happy having the Dana stuff. I just feel like we're such limited time, what like 3 hours of Ellie's perspective, because when we go to Abby, I'm going to assume we're not really going to see much of Ellie at all in season three. So what we saw this season, like that's basically Ellie's story for the game, because after that last confrontation that we see with Ellie and Abby, like there's not too much left of the game essentially. So this is like most of what we're getting of Ellie, and I just feel as if I don't know. I feel like they could have done a bit more to get me invested in like the actual mission that she's on to try and hunt down Abby. I felt like it was getting sidetracked a bit too much for me to be fully focusing in on it. If you get me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but I I wasn't again like I wasn't too like I think things were balanced enough between the characters that I didn't mind the way they kind of sparsed it out, and I was again pleasantly surprised that Abby wasn't. I kept expecting her to be in the episodes. I mean, I feel like rather than just having her at the end, they maybe could have given her like maybe one or two scenes, but I understand that they just wanted to give her her whole story. And I'm wondering how much she's going to dominate of season 3. It's like how long are they going to keep us on that cliffhanger where she just like quote unquote shoots Ellie, right?
Yeah, I mean, is that not the silliest cliffhanger you've ever seen? Do you think
I
Ellie
mean,
died? Gee, I
listen,
wonder if the main
listen.
hero is being killed.
Nothing is worse than the Negan cliffhanger. So
I'm sure you were getting like PTSD when you saw like the film fade to black or the jump cut to black. It wasn't even a fade. It's just like no, 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 bang, and then it just stopped. Um, but yeah, pretty crazy stuff. I'm trying to think about some other stuff that happened in the show. Music was still pretty good. I enjoyed quite a lot of the music. The set design I thought was still amazing. I know that was one of our biggest praises of the TV show from season one. I thought the sets were fantastic. I think Jackson looked very lived in. I think Seattle looked great. I think a lot of the kind of scenes that they had and like the kind of places looked very derelict. I think all that stuff was good. Like I said, music was good. Ah, you know what we could talk about? One of our biggest criticisms of the first series was there wasn't enough infected. We only seen them for like maybe 4 or 5 episodes, and in like two of those episodes there was maybe one scene with an infected.
yeah,
Is
you
there
had.
less infected in this
Well, it's
series
interesting.
or
Like you had two scenes where they talk about like the smart infected, but they were really only in two scenes, and then like
yeah,
it's kind of like all right, like we've covered our bases by having them in the Jackson attack, and now it's like you had the teaser with the smart one. I wish the smart infected had been more of a pivotal role in towards the finale because it
yeah,
just turns into human versus. Unfortunately, like and for people who watch my stuff for The Walking Dead, this is what happened with The Walking Dead. It's the zombies started to become less of a threat because it's just giant, like Rick's giant group versus Negan's giant group, and it's like they just use the walkers as like a way to like kill the other person. Like no one even fears them anymore. It's like, oh, okay, there they are, they're around. That's clearly not the case though. I think one scene that hammered home how frightening they are is the scene where the sergeant woman's talking about her son stuck in the spores down in the basement. Like there were still some creepy scenes with the
yeah.
infected to remind us that this shit is pretty bad. So
Yeah, and I like that as well. I like having that intro scene of like the mum being like, "I left him down there," and it was her own son, and then you obviously see that son when Ellie goes down there, because the son looks they did a very good job of casting a mother and son that looked very similar, or the actors that played them looked very similar. So credit to them for that. But yeah, I feel like there was a smart infected in episode one, which is the first introduction to it, uh, and then obviously episode two you had them in abundance, so I'm not going to complain about that. And then you had I think the only other moments was the in the train station or the subway station or whichever one it was. Again, big Fallout vibes from that, by the way. Whenever that happened, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm back in DC, smashing ghouls with flipping sledgehammers. But anyway, the infected were in that scene, I remember. And then there was the smart infected that bites Ellie. That's the first time Dina finds out that Ellie's immune. With that
mm-hmm.
infected. Um, Oh, and sorry, and they're also infected in the scene where they get rescued by Jesse as well, because Jesse they're about to kill Dina, I think, and then Jesse shoots them, and then they're saved. Um, I guess if there's only 7 episodes, I guess there were dealt like there was a decent amount of infected, but let's be honest, I think we need to put our expectations like we have to adjust them in a certain way. Like I think the budget for this show means that they probably can't get like infected all the time because I see people complaining about that online that like where's the infected this episode? I'm like, I don't think the budget's going to allow them to have like a big infected set piece like every episode. I just don't think it's that kind of show. And I think Druckmann as a creator wants to kind of acknowledge the humanity of the situation as opposed to just, haha, funny infected guy gets shot and scary, action set pieces. Like I think he cares more about the characters than showing off the infected all the time. So I feel like there was kind of I think there was enough infected in this series to like I've got no complaints compared to like the first season where I think that there were probably scenes that could have done with more infected. I feel like this season didn't have as big an issue um with that.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, yeah. I it's funny. Like I didn't even think about the matter of the infected until you brought it up, and I was like, oh yeah. Well, again,
Yeah,
but like the
they're here
scenes
as
that
well.
were there stuck out in my mind. The attack, the spores in the basement, like when it was there, it was impactful. Like the sneaky guys, you know. So there was enough to keep my interest alongside everything else. But yeah, no, it was
Yeah,
so much of Seattle's abandoned, you know. So it's like, oh, where the hell are they? I don't
yeah.
know.
And I'm wondering if they're sprinkling in like the smart infected thing as a way to like introduce other, because I'm not too sure of the infected. I know one big infected with Abby, which I really hope we see in season
Yeah.
three.
Again, this is I
Uh,
just don't have that the second game knowledge, you know? Like I
yeah.
have no idea what's even playing in the background of this video. I probably sniped it from some full-time gamer with a business degree. I don't know.
Who knows?
We'll see. We'll see.
Uh, Well, I think that the big thing in season three they're going to have infected wise is they're going to have the Rat King, which is like the biggest set piece in like the whole game, and
Rocking.
I'd be very curious to see how that looks on in real life. But yeah, for this one, I don't really have any qualms with the amount of infected
Yeah.
that were brought in. Um, I think that most of the stuff was focused on more of the internal kind of like the internal kind of struggles that was going on with like the characters that were there. Um, I think all that's pretty straightforward. But um, yeah, I guess what are your kind of like the series only 7 episodes. Started with the Jackson stuff with Joel, ended with the Abby. With the revelation Abby's going to be the kind of protagonist of the next series. What's your kind of overall views then of like this series? Like, did you enjoy it? Were you kind of overwhelmed, underwhelmed? Were you like, you know, well, what kind of take did you have at the end of it?
The ending. Let's see. It was a little bit of a cop out, like we said, to do the shoot and then dead kind of thing. It was pretty shocking to have Jesse just die the way he did, like after his
Yeah,
character was kind of built up, and it's just like fucking just axed, you know.
yeah,
But I
that's the kind
think,
of stuff I like.
this world's all about consequences, and there had to be a consequence to Ellie racking up the murders she was. So I was like, okay, fair enough. Um, so I don't know. I wish there was a little more finality to it because I know like it's kind of like a gimmick. Like here, we're gonna keep you roped into season three by not telling you what happens with that scene and dragging it out, and we got to tell Abby's story first. But one scene I didn't understand: why did they have her go to the cult island, get tied up,
Oh my
almost
gosh,
killed,
yeah,
and then some random Deus Ex Machina saves her, and then she leaves and goes to
yeah.
the aquarium? I was watching with my dad. I'm like, why didn't she just go to the aquarium? Why? Why was there this whole scene where she like
This is
that?
what
It
I'm
was
saying. It's
useless. It
blue
was the most
balling,
useless scene.
blue balling. Because yeah, take a wild guess who is at the flipping village burning it down. Gee, I wonder which other protagonist is not here at the moment on screen is going to be there. Like
Oh
it's
wow,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so kind of like the thing that annoys me about stuff like that is that that's going to be really frustrating on rewatches when like that this little detour, this like 5-10 minute detour, has no relevance to Ellie's story. They're just doing it as a way to, haha, wink, wink, audience. You know what's happening here. You know you're going to see it in season three. There's so many of that in this series that I almost feel as if like the reason why, because you can probably tell in this review, I'm quite critical of this series because I feel like I just almost watched a preview to the season three. I didn't really watch like a full start to finish, narrative. I feel like I got kind of a splash of it, but I need to check out part two in season three to really get the full experience. And I'm as someone who, maybe when season three comes out and maybe it'll be great, maybe then I'll look back at this stuff more favorably. But as someone in the moment who I'm only working with season one and season two, I kind of feel like I haven't seen the full picture, but not in like I can't wait to see what new stuff on top of this I'm excited to find out more about. It's more just, I don't really know what's going on, and I kind of wish that I wouldn't be left so in the dark for these weird detours. I'm really glad you brought that up. I completely forgot
Yeah,
about
the
that flipping
detours
sidetrack.
are they're they're a bit questionable, and I it's funny though because with Abby's perspective taking focus in the third season, like how many detours will we really have? Like you're obviously going to But then, like, you're going to explore all of her friends, and so many of them are dead.
Yeah,
So,
like yeah,
I almost wish,
it's strange.
their deaths had happened after, like killing the pregnant girl and the guy I think she hooks up with in the game, and the
Yeah,
girl
yeah,
who dies in the basement, like who's going to be the protagonist of the space game from Naughty Dog. Like,
yeah.
why didn't that
It'd be
like?
like
It's
it
weird.
would be
It's
like if they had like it'd be like if they had the Red Wedding like episode one of that series, and then the rest of the series is like a flashback to like the previous episodes building up to it. It's like, well, why get invested in like in like Robert Stark's story when he's gonna die at the Red Wedding?
Yeah, but
Spoilers for
then
Game
it
of
like
Thrones if
they would
anyone
be like in
cares.
the name of getting Abby's story forward and syncing it to the present. That's like
Yeah.
that's the storytelling mechanism, and it's okay if those things happen. That's what I would see them arguing. So, so
Yeah, I think that there's no real surprise what my biggest criticism is of this series, and I think it is the writing. I think just the way the story's been structured, I'm not the biggest fan of. It just for me personally, just going back to the kind of guttural, just watching it after episode two, which I really enjoyed, and I kind of knew the Joel thing was going to happen, and I was curious after that to see how they were going to tell the story. After that, I just kind of felt as if like the show was just meandering, like there wasn't really like a big. Obviously, you had this Abby thing, like we have to hunt down Abby and kill her, but I felt like they were kind of just like sidestepping their way to the finish line and backtracking a wee bit and doing a twirl on the way there. I'm like, just can we just focus on the road? Why do we have to take all these detours and weird steps to things that you're only getting wee like crumbs of? And yeah, I think some of the dialogue was a bit embarrassing as well. We mentioned a couple of the silly lines. Most of the lines that have been kind of memed at this point, so I don't even really need to say too many more of them. But yeah, just I think some of the like character writing was a bit off and a bit weird. Some of the new characters I'm not a fan of. Obviously, I said Isabella Mendez. I thought she was great as a Gina. Um, but on the other hand, like we have this new character in this show, in this series, played by Catherine O'Hara, called Gail, who is a kind of she's like the resident psychiatrist of the of Jackson. I know you said at the beginning of the show that you
I like
liked
that
the
scene
Joel.
that they
Yeah,
shared between each other.
I didn't mind that scene until I realized that she was basically just there as like someone for the characters to just exposition their feelings to. Like you couldn't write a better job title for an exposition character than being a
Yeah,
psychiatrist
it's
because
like
then you can
those.
just be like,
It's a
tell me your thoughts right now.
that's what they call a function character, where it's there to serve
Yes,
a function.
very
There
good,
you
very
go.
good phrase. Yeah, she is literally the only reason why she is in this story is to be a exposition dump by other characters
Right.
because it happens with Joel in episode one, it happens with Ellie in episode three, and I think it happens with Tommy as well in episode three. I think he also has a wee sit down like whenever they're watching like the baseball game or something. He just goes in this big like, oh, I don't know what to think about this Joel situation. I just feel like it's very lazy and on the nose. I'm like, isn't there like a smarter way for you to convey the character's thoughts and opinions than just having a literal character there that her job is to listen to their internal thoughts? I don't know. I feel like that stuff was a bit on the nose. Like I didn't
Yeah.
really get anything out of her
I
character because
wasn't.
that was her only real
Yeah, I wasn't
purpose.
like.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it wasn't too much of a distraction for me. Like, I thought it was okay. I can see the validity in your, argument there. Hands down, favorite. Well, the new side characters was the cameo by Josh Peck. I was just waiting
Oh,
when the grenade was dropped in the truck. I was waiting for him to say Megan, and then it just blow up. I was waiting
I,
for it, but it didn't happen. I was
I
very disappointed. So anyway.
I find that stuff so interesting when like just getting these kind of actors just to be in like a scene essentially because
So
obviously it
Josh
happened in the
Peck
first game. But
has
like,
pushed the button in Oppenheimer and now been
yes,
blown up in The Last of Us. I just
I know he's living his best
he
life.
is the like he's got contacts where he's like, I really enjoy this. Let me go. It's like, hey, Chris Nolan, love your films. Can I do something in it? Oh, you can press the big button. Oh, hey,
Yeah,
like Craig Mazin, like love the games, love the show. What can I do? Oh, you can be like a catalyst for Isaac, losing his, mind in the early days of the WLF. It's like what? It's like, oh, it's like, okay, I'm glad he just has these contacts. So
yeah, I
it's
did find that
funny.
very funny. He's literally in like the first 30 seconds as well. So the minute I opened that episode and
I
watched
didn't know
it,
what to expect. I was disappointed. I was like, oh, is he gonna be like an asshole soldier
yeah, I thought
character?
so as well.
And
I
then he
was like,
just
oh, this is
dies. I'm like,
interesting.
no.
Yeah, I know. But literally, like, we're the only two people, and other like Drake and Josh fans are the only people that are like, oh, no, Josh, that's a shame. because you have the other guy who like Isaac was pairing up with. This kind of he turned into like a skinhead in the flash in the jump forward. Like that's the kind of stuff I'm interested in. I'm like, okay, they have these other like bad people, and that's another thing I guess is like they've almost set up the antagonists for series three better than the antagonists for series two, of which we were currently watching. Like I'm interested in like the Isaac stuff. I'm interested in the Seraphite stuff, but none of that is going to get resolved with Ellie. It's all Abby's story. Like they're almost making Abby's story so much more exciting than the Ellie stuff that I'm kind of bored watching Ellie. Which, I really liked Ellie in season one. Like I shouldn't be feeling bored watching her do her thing in season two. But the stuff they're setting up with the next season coming up, I'm much more kind of interested in. And that's the stuff I'm like, oh, I kind of wish we saw more of like Isaac and this, flipping psycho like leader of his. It's kind of stuff that I wish was elaborated on a lot more in this series. But what we kind of got, I thought was okay. Like it kept my interest. I mean, that's something. But I didn't like really enjoy it like I did the first season. I guess that's kind
Right.
of my overall thoughts in general. Is that like the
The
ending
first
kind of revealing
season
that
and the
Abby's going to
first
do it?
game always will stand, and I think
Yeah,
this it all it did was confirm kind of what we already know. First game stands heads and shoulders above the second game, and this
yeah,
is really in the category. And I think I said this either in the review or just an opinion I've had. Like The Last of Us, just it wasn't a game that needed a sequel, in my opinion.
yeah.
It
I was
didn't
I
need it.
was saying that in the
It
last
didn't
review.
need it. It didn't need it, and I just think it would have been okay if, because like Joel made his decision, for humanity, whatever. Like Ellie goes the rest of her life believing a lie, but probably deep down knows some shit went on. Like it's okay. Like it's not the worst thing. Like there are a lot of pieces of media where I think they should have just stood on their own. Like the movie Inception is one. Like there are just some where it's like you can't do this better, right? And I think while pieces have been very enjoyable, it does is hammer that point home. So there's some stuff to like about it. There's some stuff to hate about it. I think just like the first season, the second season improved things from the game and streamlined some things for the audience, made some logistical. It's the opportunity for them to do things a different way. If they like, man, we kind of screwed up or we don't like the way this panned out in the game, this is your redo, right? In The Walking Dead with the comic book, the show did that for the like Kirkman laughed and he felt like the show was improving things that didn't pan out when it actually hit the page. And I feel like the same thing is kind of happening with the game. So we'll see if that continues into season 3. And now with Abby's perspective. So like what would be your overall rating out of 10, I guess? I think we did this for the first season of The Last of Us. What's your out of
Yeah,
10
I
rating?
think I think I think that my rating for the last one was like 9 or something. It was quite high. I think I'm giving this. I'll be honest. I think I'm giving this maybe like a 6.5 or a 7. Like it was still good. I still enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I'm
I was
not
gonna
gonna
say
say it was
7.
bad or anything.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I disliked it, but I felt myself kind of losing interest. And like I said, I was focusing more on stuff that I kind of wish was being built on, but wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, I'm saying that it's probably like a 6.5 out of 10 for this series. But despite that, I'm like quite looking forward to season three, which is really weird to say. Like for a show that I'm moderately enjoying, it feels strange for me to be like, oh, but I can't wait for the next series because the way that they've built up a lot of the Abby stuff, I actually am interested in. However, I feel like, in my personal opinion, they did this at the detriment of this season's quality. And I think when the show is all and done, which by the way we should probably say behind the scenes, season three obviously has already been confirmed. They have also said they want to do a season four. I don't think a season four has been confirmed, but Craig and Neil have said we want a fourth season to finalize everything. Uh, I'm going to tell you this up front: if Abby's story ends with the same endpoint as season two did, there is not going to be enough content for a fourth season. If they're still using the game's material, there isn't like another 7 hours worth of content in the game after the Abby and Ellie confrontation. Essentially, there's like not that much happening
Yeah,
after
the
that.
fact that they dragged this to a fourth season is kind of ridiculous to me. I felt like they
Yeah,
could accomplish it all in 3 seasons.
they could
But
definitely do it
now
in
I
three.
see
They
what
could
they're gonna
definitely
do.
have the Abby stuff.
Season 3, they're gonna drag Abby's story out, and then 4 will be the resolution of everything. then that'll be
Yeah,
it.
and I'm not sure if in that fourth season are they gonna do completely new stuff or
I don't know. They
how that's
better
gonna
end it
work.
better
But
than the second game wraps up with,
yeah,
we don't.
well,
I'm not gonna go into
yeah, we
that. But
do.
for anyone
Yeah,
who knows,
we'll see.
they better. We'll talk
Yeah, if
about
you
that
know,
in
you
our.
know.
We'll talk about that in our
Um,
season 3 review whenever the hell that comes
exactly.
out. But
But my point is that when we get to season three, if I do end up wanting to rewatch the series, I'll really look forward to the season one rewatch. I don't think I'll be looking forward to that season two rewatch because I don't think a lot of stuff really kept with me. Obvious high points. Episode two. I think Joel's death. As much as I disagree with it on a critical story perspective in terms of how the game ended up going, regardless, I think it was executed as well as it possibly could have been. I think the Jackson fight is maybe the best thing I've seen from the whole show, including season one. Like I thought it was fantastic. Um, and I really liked the flashback stuff with Joel. I quite liked, having it all in one episode. I wasn't really sure if I would have preferred that or the flashbacks, but I think having a standalone episode where all right, this is the Joel and Ellie flashback episode. Oh, one more thing I will say just about episode, very, 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 very briefly. Uh, One thing I've got to give Bella Ramsey for, I know I've been kind of saying, they've been okay, is that I think they were really good at portraying Ellie at different ages. Like, I think whenever you saw the Ellie birthdays whenever she was still like 15, 16. I think I think that Bella did a really good job of like channeling that kind of younger Ellie energy that was in the first season. And I think you could really tell the differences between Ellie as a person, over the course of the series and Ellie as a person over the course of those flashbacks. I think there was very distinct, changes to that character, and I think that that could only have been done through Bella Ramsey's really expert portrayal of that. So I want to
yeah,
give them kudos for that as well.
yes, Ellie and
But
Jolie, definitely
Ellie and Jolie, yeah,
the new protagonist. But yeah, that's actually an observation I didn't even think about. So yeah,
yeah,
no, I
that
mean,
was a big thing that stood out to me in that episode whenever I was watching it. But yeah, those two definitely the highlights of this season. Low points. I think the writing needs to improve. I'm really sorry, Neil. I know you think your writing is the best thing on God's earth, but it isn't. Please hire other
making
script
amendments to
supervisors.
this season already tell like he won't admit it, but like that's and I'm sure Craig and Mason in discuss board discussions have said like I don't know, like
I
this
know that
didn't land.
what's her
I
name,
got to change
Haley.
it.
I think Haley Gross is that her name. I think she helped write the Last of Us video game. I think she got brought on as a writer for this series as well. But yeah, I think you need some new voices. You need some new people to bring out some new ideas for Neil. And I feel like the damage has already been done for this season. Season three, I actually have higher expectations for season three than I had for season two, which I was not expecting to say. But as for this season, I don't know. It's a very very mild recommendation, which is a bit of a drop down from what the first season
Yeah,
was. But
but again, we
we'll
expected
see where
that.
it
I
goes.
expected
Yeah,
that, and it kind of landed. It landed slightly better than I thought, but still around the same mark. And I think that's kind of the summation of it overall.
yeah. And I think we kind of hinted a little bit on predictions for season three. I think the Rat King will be there. Do you know what the Rat King is? Every time I say
No,
that,
no, I don't, and I don't want to
it's
know.
basic.
I don't want
All
to
right,
know.
fair enough, fair enough. If you know, you know. I think the Rat King
Yes,
will be
I
in
don't.
season three,
Yeah,
and I really am looking forward to seeing how they're going to pull that off. Beyond that, yeah, I think Abby's story is quite interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing, especially is it like Olivia and Lev or something? It's like basically like two siblings that Abby meets. Their story is quite interesting, and I'll be curious to see how they adapt that. And I guess the biggest thing is the ending, and like how they're going to stick that. If they're even going to try something at the end of the series three, I could see season three ending with like the end of that confrontation between Abby and Ellie because after that gunshot, it does turn into like an actual fight and like a brawl, and it's quite long and lengthy in the game. I'll be curious to see how they adapt that in the show, but I could see that being the ending of season three. And then, as you say correctly, I think season four will be the fallout from that, and I'll have to expand on that. Um, but I am looking forward to season three, despite my kind of moderate opinions on this series as a whole. But yeah, are you kind of in the same boat then? You're kind of like this season was okay, but next season
yeah,
you're hoping will be
yeah.
kind of
No,
better.
I'm aligned there, and it's like I said, like the show landed about where I expected it to.
Yeah. What did your dad think? We need to get your dad's
He
take
liked
on
it, but
this.
he was falling off. Like right, like he got enjoyment, but he was kind of like he was kind of ticked when Joel got killed off, and he wasn't as big on the Dina Ellie adventures, and yeah, I saw his interest decline, and he wasn't all that excited about season three. So I just, again, I don't understand like just axing your main guy. Like he was such the heart of that show, and it's just hard to replicate. It's really just difficult to take your main character you pumped so much life energy in giving him such a full story, start to finish in the first game, and then saying like, dude, you're not going to be here anymore. It's like it's just really hard for any medium, any medium. You know, it was even hard in Game of Thrones when you kill off Ned Stark. Like, sure you shift to other characters, but like you still feel the absence of the dude, right? Like, and fortunately for Game of Thrones, they got so many strong Type A personality types where it's like, okay, he can be replicated, but but Last of Us does not have that same benefit. It just doesn't, And trying to replace him with the antagonist, it's just like, no.
Yeah, and that's obviously like that's someone that's never like I presume your dad's not very familiar with the second game, so that's come from someone who's like
Yeah,
completely
yeah, and
blind to
that's what
the
I'm saying. He had no knowledge of it and was still kind of like,
yeah.
what the hell,
In a behind the scenes thing, apparently, I don't know the full figures, but apparently the viewership has dropped in this
Yeah,
series compared to the
I
first one.
saw those stats and I wasn't surprised. I was like, yep.
I think yeah, the Pedro thing will probably hurt them. And I did say this in our last review about season one. Dropping Pedro Pascal will be a big hit for them. Like Caitlin Dever is a pretty respected actress, but she's nowhere near the star power of Pedro. Like he's obviously
Yeah,
like
no,
on
you're
a whole
right.
nother
Like
planet.
it just not having him attached to this project anymore, just it does. It significantly hurts, and I'm sure their season three viewership is gonna be way worse than two. You know,
Yeah,
so
which we'll see if that will be justified or not when we see the actual content of season three. But for now, season two it's good,
good.
I would say. But yeah, a lot of kind of things are being, a lot of things are being kind of hinted at that will be expanded on beyond. Put it this way, thank goodness I got season three because if they imagine if they did all this and then HBO were like, your viewing ratings were very good, you're getting cancelled, and then it just ends on like that cliffhanger of like of Abby shooting Ellie,
Yeah,
and that's just how it
well,
ends.
it's
Like it
kind
would
of
be
what happened to Westworld. They were supposed to have
yeah
one more season to wrap it all up, and it just ends in this weird limbo for anyone who freaking followed that series. So yeah, no,
yeah.
shows have been canceled before. It's certainly happened to fair share. So, um, I mean,
That's wild,
the
but
Boys spin-off series, like the Gen V, is on hold because one of the main actors died.
yeah,
So they're all messed
yeah, it's
up
pretty
because of that now.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So sometimes real life things happen. It's yeah, yeah, yeah. So we shall see. But anyway, appreciate you doing the review with me. Long time coming.
I'll be here. When will be the next one? Fallout season two, probably.
Fall season two. Yeah, it's just ping pong in between the two video game series, and one would hope I had some other content on the channel to put up before then. But again, like I'm not really active here, and that was the point of the last channel update that I gave. So, but I still consume all this stuff, So I'm, still a gamer, still invested in the culture. It's just, obviously not as much at
Yeah,
the
it's
forefront
just
of.
life. It's happening. We're not kids anymore.
Yeah,
Like
more
playing video games all the
responsibilities.
time. Like we have to fit this into like our actual lives. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes, yes. So, all right, that's it. Conclusive. Um, Arid Lord, P Dog, signing out. Peace.
see you later.